right, so welcome back, everyone, to the Mogul Performance Podcast. If you are new here, this podcast is all about high performance leadership, executive coaching, and the journey of those who are pushing their limits in their industries. So today, what we're going to talk about is we're going to go into industrial organizational psychology, otherwise known as IO psychology, career development, and leadership growth, with a special guest who knows this space inside and out. So I'm excited to welcome Ellie, an expert in career coaching, IO psychology for professionals, helping them land six-figure roles to break into competitive industries. We'll be talking about navigating career transitions, breaking common myths, and about IO psychology and how leaders can thrive in today's workplace. Before we jump in, if you are looking to take your leadership to the next level, Mogul Performance offers executive coaching, leadership assessments, and development programs tailored to help high performers scale their impact. If you want to know more, check out the free resources that we have on the Mogul Performance website and or book a discovery call. So now the promotional is out of the way, let's jump into it. So Ellie, welcome to the show. Let's start with your journey. How did you get into IO psychology and career coaching?
Absolutely. Would love to do that. Thank you so much for having me. When I think about my journey, I think about my very first start. My very first career was in recruiting. That was my first really corporate job after college. I was really in the right place at the right time. I was a concierge at a health club, and I got an internal interview. They had a policy to where if you were an internal applicant, you would get an interview for any job. So even though my resume had no recruiting experience, I got that interview because I had already worked there. And thank goodness I did, because there's no way they would have considered me otherwise. But I went into that interview. I just showed a ton of enthusiasm, and that led to me landing the role. And so that start in recruiting gave me really insights into what hiring managers and recruiting teams are really looking for when they're looking at applicants. And through recruiting, I ultimately felt like, I was helping people get jobs, yes, but I was also rejecting people a lot. And I couldn't always be totally transparent about why I was rejecting them, because we had, company policies that kind of, restricted us from sharing that feedback with our candidates. And over time, that really got to me. I just had all this great feedback inside of me that I wanted to share with the world. And so that's how I kind of transitioned into career coaching. And I got my first opportunity to do career coaching as a volunteer. And I remember when I got that invite, I was trying to think of like ways that I could get out of it. Like I was like, let me look at my calendar and hopefully I have something on there so I don't have to go. But then as I like sat down and looked at the calendar, I was like, wait a second, like, why am I trying to find a way out of this? Like, why don't I just do it? I'd probably like it. I'd probably be good at it. It would probably be like good for me to do. And so then I went and I had a blast, and it turns out I was really good at coaching others, and all that feedback I had bottled up inside me really just like came and spilled out to all the students that were there. Those poor students had to listen to me like ramble on about all of the feedback I had, but it was also really helpful for them too. So that is how I got started in career coaching. And that also through recruiting, I was working in HR, and that's kind of how I got exposure to IO psychology. I was doing a little bit of data analysis in my recruiter role, and I really liked that part of my role. And so I thought about getting a master's degree in data analytics. And when I was researching what degree options there are, I stumbled upon IO psychology as a really great fit between what I was currently doing in HR and what I wanted to be doing, which was a little bit more of that data analytics. And I actually ended up working as a business intelligence analyst for a little bit. But ultimately, that wasn't as fulfilling for me as career coaching. So then I pivoted and decided to go full force in my own career coaching business. And that's where we're at today.
That is awesome. That is such an amazing journey. Did you even know about IO psychology beforehand when you were
No,
not when you're going as a recruiter?
nope, no idea.
That's
Not
interesting. You
until
just
I did that
stumbled upon the
research.
career. I feel like a lot of people when they talk about their journey into IO psychology, it's not necessarily a super well known field. It's getting there. People
Yeah.
are starting to figure it out a little bit. when I talk to some individuals, like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I'm an industrial organizational psychologist," and they're like, "Huh?" And then, you have to kind of explain it. But then some people are like, "Oh yeah, I know. Like my friend's cousin is one of those, and he does that, and it's cool." So yeah, that's really neat.
Yeah, totally. And I think a lot of that is because our name is so long and confusing. I
Yeah,
think if we were just called maybe like workplace psychology or employee psychology or something like that, that would probably be better. But
yeah,
absolutely, I'm really glad that we are getting more and more popular as the years go on.
yeah, definitely. Awesome. So curious. So as you are breaking into IO psychology, that can be tough for a lot of professionals. So, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced when you started off in that field?
Absolutely. So, again, this was also kind of a right place, right time. I was actually promoted within my current company before I'd graduated. I was promoted into that people analytics business intelligence role. And so my challenges weren't necessarily with, applying to jobs or interviewing or anything like that, but my biggest challenge then became once I actually got the job was experiencing a lot of imposter thoughts. I had achieved, and I'm very proud of, that I got a huge salary jump when I had transitioned into my new role, but I actually experienced some discomfort with it too because I felt like my job was easier than any job I'd ever done before, and I was making more money than I ever had before. But then what I came to realize over, like, therapy and really, like, kind of compartmentalizing it and breaking it down is that what I was doing was I was actually building my skills, and so that my job felt easier to me. So it wasn't necessarily that the job was easier, it was actually a very challenging role, but I had built up my skills so much through my master's degree, and through kind of challenging myself and being resourceful and learning new things that ultimately, it wasn't luck or, I didn't like land on an easy job. I had built up the skills to make my job easy. And so over time I did become more comfortable with the salary that I was earning. But yeah, I mean, so my challenges were actually very different from what we see from like a regular job seeker, where their main challenges are number one, figuring out what they want to do in IO psychology, because we are a very large field. We're very niche, but we're also very large. We've got a very big umbrella with a lot of specialties within our field. So figuring out what you want to do. And then the second problem of that, it becomes, how do I get an interview? And I think particularly in the market that we're in right now, that's becoming more and more challenging. And then third is when you get an interview, how can I interview in a way that lands me an offer, and not only just an offer, but like a really high quality, high paying offer, like you mentioned in the intro, six-figure offers. Like that's what we're hoping for. That's what we're looking for. And that's not going to come if you don't perform well in that interview. And that's why my business is called Rock and Secure. It's rock your interview, secure a job offer. And I almost want to kind of change that to like secure a lucrative job offer because very much believe in the power of a strong interview to secure yourself that offer. So those are the challenges I faced, a little bit different than the three main challenges that we're seeing for IO job seekers right now.
Yeah, that imposter syndrome is so real, and it just when you're going, even when I was going through school and education, and I jump into a role, and I'm like, okay, well, I think I know what I'm talking about, but you don't necessarily believe yourself, but at the end of the day, it's like you had the skills all along, you knew it, you knew exactly what you needed to do, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
So were there any defining moments when you realized that career coaching was your path? And then what led you to ignite that IO career?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ignite Your IO Career is the name of my current program. And I will definitely get into how I built that, but I want to start with the first question you asked of the defining moment of career coaching for me. I love this question so much because to me it's actually very clear. It was when a coworker of mine and I were talking about winning the lottery. And like one of my coworkers was like, if I win the lottery, y'all would never hear from me again. Like there wouldn't even be a goodbye message. Like I would just be gone. I thought that was funny and cheeky, but my response was actually very different. Mine was like, "Oh, well then like I would just spend my time going to colleges and high schools and teaching students how to interview. And like that answer came for me so quickly and so easily, even though I'd never thought of it before. And so it was kind of that question that ignited that spark in me. And then I was thinking about that answer for so long. And eventually, like one night, it's the middle of the night, 3 a.m. I wake up and I just feel like someone is like kind of shaking my shoulders of like, Ellie, like you need to do career coaching as like for work. Like this business intelligence thing, like it's a great job on paper, but you're not passionate about it. You're much more passionate about this. Like, do it. And so I just grab my phone, I start Googling like how much money does a career coach make? I wasn't actually even thinking about it as a business. I was just like, okay, maybe I'm going to pivot my career to career coaching. And I like search like how much money does a career coach make? And the answers were very lackluster, not satisfactory. But then I did find an answer, which was you can do career coaching and you can make a lot of money. It's going to be way harder, but it's through starting your own business. And I was like, okay, like I've never shied away from a challenge.
Mhm.
Why don't I do that? And so that really like ignited a light in me to start my own business. And then what ignited me to start the Ignite program was through the realization that I was actually helping a lot of IO career professionals already because I was kind of a general career coach for a while. And the IO folks were the ones that were my favorite to help because I am still very, very passionate about the IO field. I believe that the more IOs we have in the world, the better our world is going to be. Um, and so I had decided to really niche down into helping IO psychology professionals. And so Ignite Your IO Career is essentially all of the systems and all of the best practices that I've learned that have either worked for me or worked for other IO professionals that I have served and helped. And so yeah, that is what culminated into the program that I now serve my students with today.
That's amazing. You know, and just by what you were just talking about, you can hear that entrepreneurial spirit just come out of you when you're talking about
Totally.
that. I mean, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and just taking a thought, and then like look at where it is now. Like you know how it's developed and the people that you've impacted. That is absolutely amazing.
Thank you, Evan.
Such It's so inspiring.
Thanks.
Okay, so there are a lot of professionals in the IO field, and in that field, they earn degrees, and kind of like what you said before. Sometimes they feel a little bit lost afterwards, or maybe that a bit of imposter syndrome or phenomenon. So, why do you think that so many people struggle from that transition from education to the actual practice of IO?
Absolutely, for sure. So this is something I had mentioned a little bit earlier, which was that we've got a huge umbrella in our field, tons of career paths, tons of specialties, and what that means is that we have overwhelming amount of choices to make about like what we want to specialize in. And I think a lot of that comes from a lack of visibility, you know, not even knowing what jobs exist. And so what I do with my clients is I have them compare each of the specialties against each other in this kind of exercise to narrow down like their top three branches or areas of specialty. And then I have them actually research what that role would look like, network with people who are in that job currently, and then start to explore, if this is really a fit for me. And so I think that if we think about why IO grads feel lost, I think it's because of the overwhelming amount of choices and the lack of visibility, and then ultimately not knowing how to sort through all those choices. And so that's why I do that kind of narrow down exercise, that research, that interviewing with current IO professionals who are doing the role that you are interested in, to actually help you identify what that next path might be. I think another reason too, if I could sum this all up, is that a lot of that leads to indecision and just kind of pushing the decision down the line and just hoping that it will come to you eventually. And what I want every listener to know now who might feel a little bit lost in their career, that answer is not going to come to you eventually. You do have to go and seek it out yourself. That does require some work and some effort, but there are like coaches like you and I who want to help people with that. So if I think about why IO grads are feeling lost right now, that is really that's my immediate go to, is that we've just got an abundance of choices.
Yeah, you know, and even that even relates to resume writing. We might talk about that in a little bit, but like you know, you can if you just kind of word vomit all the IO spaces from learning management systems and leadership development or talent development and all these different things that performance management, all these things that come together, there's no real focus, right?
Yeah.
Like you especially as someone who is a technician in what they do, or a specialist in their craft, like there should be some sort of focus around that. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing, is you're kind of helping get that ball rolling into that specific, the niche within the niche, right? When it comes to IO psychology.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you see that job seekers have when they're trying to break into IO psychology?
Absolutely. So this is a big one. And it comes from one of my favorite memes actually that I do think it's funny. The meme is somebody who's looking for a job. They they it's an entry level job. They need experience to get the job, but they can't get an entry level job without the experience to get the job. So it's like that experience paradox cycle. And what and while the meme is funny, I think that what it's doing is it's putting a lot of people into a place where they feel hopeless and they feel like they don't have any options. And what I want to share with, if I had like a magic wand and I could implant this thought into everybody's brain, it would be that it's not only having a job experience that counts. There is so many other experiences that can still count and still position you in a good place for a role. So let me give an example. So if I am in grad school and I am working on projects for my my master's program. And I put that into a portfolio and I show people what I did. I show the competencies and the skills that I use to present this project. I am showcasing that I have experience in doing something. So if we think about like the experience that you have, if you limit yourself to only paid work, official W-2 jobs, then yeah, you are going to be stuck in that loop. But what I want you to do is kind of adopt more of an abundant mindset and think a little bit more outside of the box of what experience do I have outside of W-2 work. And the best thing about this is that it's not only what experience you already have, you can actually build it yourself. So you can go and you can get volunteer opportunities in IO. There's an awesome organization. It's called catchafire.org. And you can go on there and find projects for nonprofits, pro bono nonprofit projects, to start utilizing your IO skills. And that is a great way for you to gain experience. Or you can even do a personal project of your own. So you can actually develop a project where you're going to use the skills and competencies that you're going to need in your role, and you can start putting that on your resume. So that is like the biggest misconception that I think people have, is that the only experience that matters is W-2 paid experience. Volunteer, personal projects, school projects, any of those types of work, like that is still experience because it's still contributing to your overall skill sets and knowledge and competencies.
Yeah, I love that. You're dropping so many truth bombs here, and I love it. It's yeah, it does. You don't have to be a W-2. You don't have to be a team member or an employee working for another organization. Like you're in school, you're paying for this education because you're gaining the skills you want to get that job that you're looking for in the future. And this I did the same exact thing when it came to my master's program and my doctorate. With my master's program, I wrote a leadership book. And then, and the key thing is if you're already working and you're in school, which most people are, take what you're learning in school and then bring it into your, I mean, I don't care if you're working
Yes.
at Subway, like bring it
Mhm.
in and apply it in some sort of way to showcase that you are actually using those skills in the workforce and you're also doing that in your own education at the same time. And even
Absolutely.
with my dissertation, like that was the first time that you could say I managed and ran an entire climate assessment survey, based on a specific generation of individuals in a large organization. That was just part of my dissertation, but I implemented that and I brought that into an organization where in like, so you're kind of, it's almost like you're killing two birds with one stone, when you're doing that. So, a lot of people think that, my school doesn't count. Oh, it absolutely, it does count. But, like you said, it's part of your experience. It's part of the skills that you're building. And that's why you're there in the first place.
Absolutely. And I'd love to share a story too of actually how I did this when I was in grad school. was visiting a restaurant very often, like every week with my friends. It was just a restaurant that we absolutely loved. And I noticed that the on the door there was this kind of like now hiring sign. And I noticed that for all of the months that we'd been going there, that this now hiring sign was there. And we had come to know the owner pretty well through, going to the restaurant every week. And I had eventually asked her, I was like, I noticed you had this like now hiring sign up for a really long time. Like, are you still hiring? Like, are you just always hiring? Because like her team members that she had were great and phenomenal. And so I was like, how is she still like incurring this problem of like needing to hire all the time? Um, and her restaurant was fantastic. So, and then she told me, she was like, "No, I have like a major turnover problem. Like all the people that I'm hiring, like they're typically staying for like only a month. And they're even when they're great, like, they're just all of a sudden they go back to college and I had no idea they were going back to college or things like that." And so just her just telling me that alone indicated to me like, okay, we've got some talent acquisition problems here. We're not asking people what their intentions are to stay or what their timelines are. And then I was like, also this sign too, like how else are you finding people? And she's like, well, I don't know how else to find people. And so I was like, okay, so maybe this sign is actually not bringing in the right type of person for you. Maybe you should try posting on Indeed. You can do that for a pretty reasonable rate. And so I was essentially like consulting her through a conversation that we were having at the dinner table, you know? And so it's kind of like you can build experience on your own as well. And I think that a lot of, new IO professionals, they don't realize that they have that option to do that and they don't feel the confidence in themselves to do that. But if you are an IO, like, and as you start to learn IO, you become more observant of these organizational issues. And so what I would encourage you to do is when you find those opportunities, like go and chase them down and really explore and expand yourself in new ways. So thought I'd share that story to really drive that point home that like you absolutely can like create an experience of your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And be curious. And the worst thing that someone can say is no.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about how you've helped people land these six-figure roles. So, what are some of the common mistakes that you see these individuals make that are holding them back into achieving or landing a role like that?
Uh-huh. Absolutely. So I think of three things. The first one I think of is we're having this when people are holding themselves back from landing a six-figure role or landing their best offer possible. The first thing I think of is they're having the salary talk too late. They are having the salary conversation all the way at the very end once they're actually negotiating the offer. What you want to do instead is you want to make sure that that salary talk happens in the first interview so that expectations of salary are set well before you're getting to the offer point. And so hopefully your recruiter is bringing it up, but sometimes they don't. Especially when the salary range is posted on the job description, they might just assume that you are completely fine with the range that is posted. And so maybe they won't ask about it in your first interview. So I think it's really powerful if you actually bring it up and you say, hey, I saw the salary range for this role was 90 to 120K. I want to be totally transparent that right now I'm interviewing for roles that are in that 110K to 120K. Do you think that with my experience and with the alignment of my, what I bring to this role, that would be something that we could achieve when we get to the offer stage. And that is going to put you in such a powerful position so that once you get to that offer stage later on, the recruiter is going to remember that conversation and say, maybe the hiring manager is like, yeah, let's offer 95K. The recruiter is going to be like, actually, this person is interviewing for roles that are like 110 to 120. I think they're probably going to get an offer 110 to 120 because we just saw them rock their interview. So I think we need to be a little bit more competitive with our offer. And hopefully they're going to try to bump up that offer for the hiring manager and advocate for you. So have the salary conversation earlier and have it in a powerful way. The second is that they will lowball themselves. And so actually, I was just coaching a client through this the other day. He's interviewing for a role where the salary range is 100 to 140K. And he's actually only targeting like 60 to 80K. And so he was like, I would be so happy with even just 100K. So I think I'm just going to tell them that my expectations are 100 to 110. And I was like, no, 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 don't do that. What I want you to do is I want you to say the salary range of 100 to 140 is completely in line with my expectations. So then that way, if they want to offer you 120 after you interview, they can offer you 120 after you interview rather than being like, well, said he was fine with 100. So let's just offer him 100. And so so that kind of like lowballing yourself can happen as well. So that would be the second one. The third one is just not knowing the market, not knowing what data is out there to help you identify what your market rate is, and that can potentially hold you back too. So what a lot of people do is they actually just assume that the role that they're currently working in is a fair market assessment of their skills and expertise, and so they'll just assume that maybe they're making 70K right now, and so they'll be like, yeah, I'll go anywhere in the 70 to 80K range. But then if they actually do the research and they find their market value, they realize they're actually in the like 100 to 120 K range. Or I've even had a client before who she was making 80K at her current role. And then we did some market research and she found out that like the minimum she should be making is 130. And so she was like, I'm so glad that we did this because I never would have known that. And I would have just assumed that 80 to 90 to 100 is like where I should land. And so do that market research and know your market rates.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I'm curious on what is your philosophy when it comes to building confidence in job seekers, especially those who are pivoting to those new roles? You mentioned earlier, how sometimes that imposter syndrome can come up and people are they're lowering their expectations of themselves. So how do you help people build that confidence?
Okay. Love this. It's 3 steps. The first is know your story. The second is tell your story. And the third is repeat your story. And so for career pivoters, the way I think of this is go to go online and find a job description of a role that you want to apply for. In that job description, you're going to see skills repeated over and over again. So let's say it's a learning and development role, and you're going to see the skill facilitation a couple of times. And so then you know that facilitation is a skill that you need to have in order to succeed in this role. And so then what you want to do is you want to prove that you have that skill. And so if you're pivoting, then you think of all the times that you've facilitated something in your last role. So I'll give a perfect example of my previous experience as a business intelligence analyst. My title did not have anything to do with training and development, but one of the things that I did in that role was I trained our offshore team on our processes. And so I had experience with developing a whole training curriculum, facilitating that training curriculum, and collecting feedback on the training curriculum to make it better. And so if I wanted to get more into learning and development, that's the experience I'm going to highlight, not all the reporting and the the other kind of day-to-day tasks that I had as a business intelligence analyst. And so you're going to want to prove that you have the skills that are related into the role that you want to pivot into. And it's easy to find them because you just go and you find a job description and you pull it out of that job description from the jobs that are open right now. But then I want to get into also like what knowing your story, telling your story, and repeating your story looks like, because I think that that's ultimately what is going to set you apart. What I find a lot of people do when they're asked a question like, tell me about yourself, is they'll just start describing facts, demographics, and they very rarely explain why they do what they do. And the people who do explain why they do what they do, those are the ones that are there. Those interviews are much more memorable. You're immediately connecting with your interviewer by explaining your why. And so knowing what your why is and knowing your story, that's going to help you not only in that interview, but also if you're, marketing yourself on LinkedIn, and you, in your About Me, you tell them your story, that is going to really that is just going to unlock so much for you. But what is more important than, or maybe not more important, but just as important as knowing your story, is telling your story and then repeating it. So repeating it is a problem that I also see a lot of people run into, is they identify their story, they put it in their About Me, they say it in their tell me about yourself in their interview, but then they don't. But then they do that and then they're like, okay, like, why isn't it working? And the reality is, it's like you have to repeat it over and over and over again. So me as a business owner, when I come on podcasts, I'm telling that story of, the lottery question that my coworker had asked me. I'm telling the story of getting that first career coaching volunteer opportunity and trying to navigate my way out of it. Like, these are stories I've told time and time again, because that's building my personal brand and it's building who I am. And so not only do you need to know your story and tell it, you're going to have to repeat it a couple of times too.
Yeah, when you look at someone else's, profile, like let's say on like LinkedIn, I was just looking around for so for facilitators and coaches earlier this week, and I was just kind of poking around some profiles, and some of them just had qualifications like this is who I am, and here's all my certifications, and this is what I've done at this role, this role, this role, this role. But then when you read a profile about someone's story, why they're passionate about what they do, and the impact that they believe that what their career, what their job, what their craft is doing, that stands out. And I remember that person's profile who I was looking at. I'm like, okay, I'm going to reach out to this person because this person has they have a deep passion for that, and that really separated them out from the 10 other people who I was looking at earlier.
100%. And I think that also too that like we're humans who are in a very stimulated world right now, and so we really like to be entertained, and facts and figures aren't entertaining, but stories are, and you are the only person with your story, and so that is by definition going to make you stand out when you share what your story is.
Yeah, exactly. So I want you to share a story about someone's transformation from one of your clients that you've had that has really stuck with you. So what does that look like for their success?
Yeah, absolutely. So a client that comes to mind for me immediately is somebody who I was actually just working with who just got a job. Um, I'm gonna call her Jill just to protect her confidentiality. But when Jill came to me, I remember asking her, like, tell me a little bit more about your job search strategy. What are you currently trying in terms of networking? What types of jobs are you going for? And I just remember that as she was answering, I felt like she had absolutely zero confidence in herself, because like everything she would say, she would end that with like, but I'm also not sure, and I also really don't know, and I haven't gotten any feedback. And so for her, I could tell that she was not only deeply discouraged but had a very low confidence in herself. And so before she had actually even joined the program, while we were just in that consultation call, I had just I not confronted her, but I had really just kind of created the space for her to admit that she was in a place where she was kind of scared and not knowing what was going to be next for her. And I think that that created and established a relationship of openness and honesty that carried throughout her transformation, really. And so as we were working together, I encouraged her to, really consider her mindset and everything that she was doing. When she started to fall into a place of low confidence, like we worked on, what are the negative thoughts that are driving this low confidence feeling, and what are the truer, and that's really important too, because when it comes to affirmations, we don't want to just make something up for ourselves, because then we're going to feel like we're lying to ourselves, and I don't like that either. So what we identify is like, what's the actual truth that I can tell myself that's actually going to lead me to take action. And so for her, that was kind of the biggest unlock. And I think for a lot of people, they think that if they get a career coach, that what they're going to unlock is like the power of their resume, or they're going to have a beautiful cover letter that's going to land them every interview, or maybe they're going to do so well in their interviews that they're going to land that six-figure offer that they've been dreaming of. And while all of that can be true, I think what often happens is that people have no idea, and they completely underestimate how transformational it is to shift your mindset into a place that allows you to take more action. So for her, that's why she stands out to me so much, because she is somebody who actually really took that mindset work very seriously. And that enabled her to take such strong actions week in, week out, no matter if she was getting rejections or interviews. She stayed consistent because she did that mindset work, and took it so seriously. And so for her, she, put in the work. She was actually debating between three offers by the time that we were at the end of her program. And she ultimately went with an offer that was actually not the highest salary, but one that she actually felt was most aligned with where she wanted to be in her career. And so she turned down, I think it was probably a matter of like $5,000 or $6,000. So she turned down a couple $1,000s just to pursue what was right for her. And that's another thing I love about career coaching too, is that I'm going to help you make the best decision for you, based off of the relationship that we've built together and what I know about you. And so that also stands out to me too, because uh, it was really cool to see somebody actually turn down a little bit of extra money to pursue what felt more aligned and right for them.
Mhm. That is amazing. That is such an awesome story. I hope Jill listens to this. Jill and just is thriving in that role if she's new to it still, but that is such an awesome success story to hear.
I can almost guarantee you she will listen to this. She's like my biggest fan. Jill,
Awesome.
I love you.
Cool. Sending hearts. Okay, so I want to go back a little bit again into imposter syndrome. That's just it's such a big topic, and especially for what you do, and for with the even with the example of Jill that you gave. So a lot of us have heard the term imposter syndrome or phenomenon before. So in your coaching, how do you help people uncover that? How do you help them like shed that from themselves when they're looking to get that go from a 60 to 70K role to a 130K role?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. So you need to experience a transformation in order to unlock that new level, right? So one of the quotes that I really wish I could identify where it came from so I could give this person credit because it's a phenomenal quote. It's just imposters don't feel imposter syndrome. If you feel imposter syndrome or you have imposter thoughts, that already indicates to me that you're not an imposter because a real imposter would just move forward and not care. And so, what I reframe imposter thoughts and imposter syndrome to is actually a signal that you're facing a challenge and you're growing. So, imposter thoughts don't become something that holds you back. It's just a signal. It's just a signal for you that this is an area that you might need to level up. And so, maybe it's a matter of you are in a new leadership role and you're about to give your employee feedback for the first time, and you're feeling some imposter thoughts of maybe, and this happens a lot too with leaders who have employees who are older than them. And so they feel like they're like, who am I to give this feedback to this person? Are they going to think I'm even credible? And they have these imposter thoughts. And so what that indicates to me is that this is going to be a challenge for you. So maybe you need to upskill in your feedback giving skills. And so maybe you need to read a book about giving feedback or watch a YouTube video about giving feedback or do a LinkedIn learning about it. Something that's going to kind of recharge that skill and that competency for you, so that you actually start to feel more confident in it, so that when it happens, you have that kind of learning or maybe that research to kind of support you in the effort. So yeah, so reframe imposter syndrome as a growth indicator. And then, when you're feeling imposter syndrome or imposter thoughts about a certain thing, go and learn about it a little bit more so that you can boost your confidence in it. And then maybe even like in a month or a year from now, you'll realize that that's actually something you're very good at. And so that is probably the biggest reframe I can give for imposter syndrome.
I love it. I couldn't agree more. I just did a recent podcast on imposter syndrome and was taught same thing what you just said is, you know, there's a lot of us, for one, you recognize that, you feel like an imposter. That tells us that you're not an imposter. And then secondly, it tells us that you care. It tells us
Yeah.
that you truly care about performing and meeting the expectations or likely exceeding them in whatever role that you're or position that you're applying for and that you're trying to get. And I think that's the biggest takeaway when it comes to imposter syndrome is like, it can be a good thing. You just gotta repurpose and reimagine what that actually means for you and how
Yes,
that can be beneficial for you.
absolutely. 100%.
So you've worked in HR, business intelligence, and then now career coaching. So this is a lot, this podcast is, a lot of it is around leadership. So what leadership qualities have stood out to you that have been the most successful for people that you've worked with?
Absolutely. So when I think about this, I actually often think about the flip side of like, what are the leaders who have really gotten in my way? And some leaders that I've worked with that have really created some chaos for me are those who are just really disorganized, can't keep track of their calendar, can't keep track of the emails that I'm sending them. That's something that indicates to me that there is an area of improvement. So if we then flip the question back, I would say organization is probably number one. So being an organized, conscientious leader, that's going to help your employees feel more comfortable with you, because they feel like they can tell you something and you're gonna remember it, or you're gonna have a meeting with them and you're gonna show up on time. Um, and the other thing I think of too is setting strong boundaries and having systems to prevent that overwhelm. So what happens with a lot of leaders is they um they find themselves in back-to-back meetings for all 8 hours of the day. And to me, that indicates that they haven't really set good boundaries about their meeting time. And so I actually find this when I'm working with career coaches who are the CEOs of their companies, is I'll ask them, like, I'll be like, like what days like what day or what times in your calendar do you have scheduled out for admin work? And they're like, none. I have to have my calendar open for my, and I'm like, no, 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 no,
Oh,
no,
that's a
no.
big mistake. I see that mistake all the time too.
Yeah, I'm like, "You can have your calendar open for specific days and times, and then you have that admin work blocked out, and if you really need to adjust it, you can, but at least you're gonna have that block in there so that you can get things done." So, strong boundaries and systems for your schedule. Um, and then I think probably the third thing, from in terms of the leadership qualities that I've seen in the most successful leaders I've worked with, is they definitely have that more growth mindset. They think more about being strategic leaders rather than being in survival mode with their team. So when the team is, really backed up with a backlog of work to do, and they're not really doing any of that strategic work, they're just in survival mode, just trying to churn and get things done. There are seasons where that happens, but that should be a season. It should not be your your baseline. And so ultimately, like, I would say leaders who get stuck in that survival mode for too long, those are the leaders that really need coaching and need help so that they can get their teams out of survival mode, so that their teams can start working a little bit more strategically and a little bit more proactively. And that's going to lead to a lot higher satisfaction within your team as well. And so maybe what I'm now just realizing too as a skill set is like identifying like when those times are happening and when you need help, so that you can reach out to people like Evan who can help you out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for the plug. You know, time. Like that's that's one thing, I guess, it just people they want to give their times. They just want to give it to everybody for
Yeah.
everything. But I think one of the things I always, I always like to say is if you don't respect your time, if you don't respect your own time, no one else will. So you need to show that you respect your time and what you are doing, and where your priorities are at, because that can easily, especially when you start building a team, easily overflow into different areas. And then I also like appreciate what you're saying too is, when you feel like the team is in survival mode, I'm sure a lot of leaders have felt like they were in survival mode. But now when
Mhm.
your team is feeling like in survival mode, it's like, what can you do to help pull them out of that? How can you help, start thinking more strategically and get that bird's eye view of a situation, brainstorm, and then work your way through it. And then, these things, like you said, it's a season, but a good leader will also make that, hey, over the next few weeks, we're really gonna be working, pretty heavily. But once we get through
Yeah.
this, on the other side, where that light is, it's gonna get a lot better, and you can celebrate or whatever you have to do afterwards.
Exactly. Yeah, my previous manager, the last manager I had before I went full time in my own business, was phenomenal at that. That was something that she did very well, was she made sure we realized that we were in a season and that better things were coming
Mhm.
and kept us motivated that way.
And if you even dive in a little bit more on on just the IO side, like that just shows like that can help with creating engagement for a team, and then it can, with higher engagement means, less turnover, and there's just so many things that kind of go on behind that when it just
Totally.
comes to really just fundamental leadership skills. But those things are, they're simple concepts, but they can be really hard to apply.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the IO field, so it's evolving. There's always new trends that are coming up. So what are some of these trends that you're noticing?
Mm. One that I've been thinking about a lot is inclusion, because like diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it's kind of
Yep.
under attack right now.
Yep.
But what I know is that Gen Z Gen Z loves inclusion.
Hmm.
Um, and they actually like they demand it from a place that they work in. Like they don't want to work for a company that doesn't believe in DEI. And so I think what's going to happen is the companies who respond to this uh I don't even know what to call it, this thing that is happening in the world.
Hmm.
The companies that respond to it by eliminating their DEI strategy and eliminating their commitment to DEI, I think that those workforces are going to you're going to see a lot less Gen Z talent in those workforces. And then the workforces that do stick with DEI strategy, that the Gen Z talent is going to go there. And so with Gen Z talent coming into the market, um, I think that that is going to evolve. Um, and so I think that really it's going to be kind of up to the IO psychologist to either depending on the strategy, advocate for DEI. If they want to bring in newer talent, use more storytelling, I would say too. And I think that also IOs too, like, might need to take a stand for what they believe in, and what, no matter which side you're on.
Hmm.
I think that that is going to actually help us evolve into a better and more aligned strategic place. Is if we actually make decisions about what we stand for. And so I think like thought leadership is really our future in IO psychology.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very sensitive topic,
Yeah.
right now. And I it's almost like, sometimes there's a few bad actors. When I say bad actors, sometimes there's a few bad companies who weren't, you know, maybe doing their DEI practices correctly, right? And that potentially was causing some issues. And then those things kind of get cherry picked into, certain headlines or whatever. I think, it's a yeah, the trend is definitely interesting. I wouldn't say the concept is going to go away. I think it's probably going to be renamed.
Yeah.
We're seeing different things that are going on right now, and I think it's just, maybe we you know we went too far on one end, and we got to kind of find like a happy medium. I'm not sure, but I think that one of the first steps that we're going to see is that name change. That typically, I mean, that always, like, having worked for the government for 9 years, like that's probably one of the biggest things that they do is they just change names on things, and then they're like, okay, now the problem is solved. So
Yeah.
yeah, that is definitely a hot topic right now in the IO field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So if you were to look back at yourself,
Mhm.
when you're just starting your career, what's one piece of advice that you would give?
Absolutely. Number one piece of advice I'd give to myself: track everything. Make a weekly progress log of your projects and the impact you created. So you start a new job, start an Excel document, says this week what I accomplished and what the impact of that was. And that is going to give you so much content for your resume, your LinkedIn profile, posts you might want to create, content you might want to create. Um, and it also helps you in your career when you have performance reviews and you want a raise, you want a promotion. You look back in that log and you look at all of the things that you have achieved. That is the number one advice I would give to myself starting my career.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I think a lot of us can be guilty of that. Not writing your things down. Not writing down your accomplishments. Um, luckily, I had some supervisors who told me that as I was kind of going through, especially while I was in the military. They were always, "Hey, write everything down," because our evaluation system, if you were to see it, how the military does their evaluations, it would drive your head up a wall. It is
Mm.
so, like, it is like IO psychology on steroids. How much thought they put into these things. Um, but the importance of that was really just to write things down, because it's so easy to forget. Even if you just have like a little journal and you just kind of scribble things down, and maybe you journal things for that specific day of what you're working on. Or for me, I like to use calendar invites. I always reflect back on my calendar invites to see, like, what was done. What did
Love
I what did
that.
I do at this time?
That's super smart. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Love that.
So tell us, what's next for you? You got any like big projects you're working on? Any programs?
Yeah, right now, no. I'm actually this year I'm really focusing on stabilization and simplifying things. So one of the things I did at the very beginning of the year is I simplified my training modules for my clients to help them get through the modules a little bit faster, a little bit more efficiently. And yeah, just really focused on the clients that I have and the clients I'm bringing on, and that is really my main focus right now, which is weird for me because as you heard, I have a very entrepreneurial spirit. I always like to be chasing new things, but as of right now in my business, we're just focusing on stabilization.
Yeah, no, that's great. Just staying focused on working on your business, not necessarily, in it all the
Yeah.
time. That's amazing.
Yeah, not as much building, a lot more just refining
Hmm.
and getting better right now.
Hmm. That's great.
Yeah.
So when it comes to some key takeaways for our audience here, what's one mindset shift that you would want to share with our audience today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in addition to the imposter syndrome one, that's one of my favorites. My other favorite is when it comes to interviewing. If you have an interview invitation, they already want you, just prove them right. Preparation, that's going to be really crucial. Preparation, not only in what what you know about the company and your research, but also like what you plan to say. Um, Actually practicing it out loud. I practice out loud for the podcasts I go on, and that helps me perform at my best. So yeah, when you have an interview, they already want you. Just prove them right.
I love that. Yeah, that just that affirmation that you get. Where can people find you if they're interested in learning more about you?
LinkedIn, that is my main platform. That's where I'm posting content for anywhere from 3 to 4 days a week. Um, and yeah, that's where you can find me and find all my stuff. LinkedIn.
Your stuff is absolutely amazing. It is so. I
Yeah.
even I'm looking at it like this is amazing. I wish I would have had this when I was going through my IO career. I still learn things to this day. Everyone who is listening needs to follow Ellie. Her content is amazing on LinkedIn.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I write it all myself, so that means a lot to me.
Awesome, great. Ellie, it was amazing to have you on today's Mogul Performance Podcast. I learned a ton from you just having this conversation. It was absolutely amazing. I hope that everyone else who's listening has also learned something about themselves, whether they are in the field of IO or not. I think this could apply to almost anybody who is in some sort of career transition or career growth. So, with that being said, if you did get value from today's episode, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review on the Mogul Performance Podcast. You can follow Mogul Performance on Instagram. We are on LinkedIn and YouTube, all at Mogul Performance to gain more leadership insights. And then if you're ready to take your leadership to the next level, we have free resources on the Mogul Performance website. So go ahead and you can download those on there. And then if you're interested, book a discovery call on mogulperformance.com. Ellie, thanks again for attending today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.